Hi, everybody. Welcome to Drag Racing's Golden Era. My name is Randy. I'm the editor-in-chief here. And as always, we are thrilled to bring you another great guest in our Legends of the Sports series of interviews. Tonight, we're going to be bringing on Larry Dixon Jr., who's going to talk about Larry Dixon Sr. We also want to talk to Larry about his career and the things that he's currently doing with the two-seater dragster and all the things he's done in the NHRA as well. But our big focus tonight is going to be on Larry Dixon Sr. and the amazing life and the addition to American culture that Larry made. So without any more from me, let's bring Larry on. Larry, we're really thrilled that you're here tonight. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me on.
Well, so I was digging through, and the first thing that I came across, of course, is that your dad won the 1970 Winter Nationals as the big first event that he won, but that really is not the beginning for Larry Dixon Sr. It goes all the way back to the 50s on Vanise Boulevard and Bob's Big Boy and the whole thing. Do you have any stories about that period of time with your dad and the iconic legend he became out of that period?
I wish I did have stories from him, but he was so low key about everything. I'll use this story as an example. I was actually last winter going through some of his yearbooks from Fulton Junior High School, and I was like literally thumbing through it, and all of a sudden it was like Pat Foster popped out. And like Pat Foster's a pretty, I think, kind of an iconic name in the sport of drag racing through the 60s, 70s, and what he did, restoring, and recreating some of the iconic cars of the 60s. Well, I'm like, and he signed his yearbook and everything. And I was like, you went to school with Pat Foster? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's like awesome. And he's just like, he didn't think it was a big deal. And from his perspective, I guess it really wasn't, because in his life, everything that happened, it was his life. Like, that was his perspective. I mean, I could be like, there was quite a few things that have come up. Found out he went to high school with Robert Redford and Natalie Wood. Never mentioned it. But again, it's just his life. He's kind of like going through it. I mean, somebody could write a movie about his life. And then, like, you talk about that 55, there were so many people from that era that grew up at that time and maybe not even seen the car, but heard about the car. And boy, your dad and that green 55, I mean, he just ruled the roost. And, come to find out, I end up coming across an article about 5 years ago. It talked about the cars of American Graffiti, how they were actual cars that those characters got wrote into the movie. So I'm like literally reading it, and it's like, and it talked about the 32 Ford, and it was the guy that was in the Road Kings. I wish I knew his name off the Tom Jant.
Tom Jant.
There you go, right? So so it talked about him and his car, and then the 55, and this article went on, and it said for more than a decade, Larry Dixon and his green 55 was king of Van Nuys Boulevard. And I'm like, Dad, like, that's huge, right? I mean, I could go to Russia and not speak the language and talk about American Graffiti, and they're going to know about that movie, and they're going to know about those cars. And it's like, and then I do my own due diligence, and it's like, you had George Lucas, and the characters in those movies were all people like in his life, but the cars were written in from co-writers that were in it that hung out in the valley in the 60s and knew of these cars, and the characters of those cars got written in. And I'm like, I'm in awe, because that's like such an iconic movie for a car guy. And my dad's like, again, no big deal. Like, I mean, he was too quiet about it. So
when I was doing research today, Larry, one of the things that occurred to me was your dad and guys like Ivo and Tom Jant and Snake and whoever else was in the valley at that time, hanging out at Bob's Big Boy at the L.A. River on the 6th Street Bridge. Any of those people that were in there, that was American. I mean, it was American iconic history. It was the laying of the car culture for the entire country, and to have your dad be involved in that and be so nonchalant about it, holy crap! I mean, that is so cool.
Well, it's and you it was so cool, but and you think about it, and it's like people from across the country are reading about what's going on in Southern California and that car culture from the magazines and such, and then they worked their way west, if they were all in on it. And my grandpa, they were, I guess my great grandfather moved from Illinois to Van Nuys, and they set up shop. My grandpa was born in Van Nuys. Same with my dad. I was born town over North Hollywood. So, but third generation of Van Nuys High, and it's just, I miss my dad a lot, and I love him to death for, I guess, just like growing up in the culture that I did, and I mean, he molded me without molding me, I guess. I'm a product of my environment, and I love the guy so much for it.
Well, I mean, if you look at I've got my notes here. If you look at the list of things that were accomplished, going forward after, Bob's Big Boy into street racing. And is it true that he lost his license? That's why he had to go legit. Is that true?
He never talked about it, how he talked about street racing back then is, like if it got too, I don't know that he ever got a ticket or got arrested for street racing. And how he talked about it back then was, if things got a little bit out of hand, the cops would tell you, hey, Dixon, you need to move it elsewhere, or, calm down. Like it was never, not like when I was street racing where, I had helicopters chase me and got arrested and my car impounded, like nothing like it is on Street Outlaws. Like we actually got arrested for it. And so, but he didn't talk about it. But I just think that was just kind of the natural progression, like for all the guys, like that, they're hot rodding around on the streets, and then, they're wanting to go quicker and faster. And you've got a dragster that you just literally can't drive on Vanise Boulevard. So you end up at the track, that's only, 5 miles away at San Fernando Raceway. Or if you had to go far away, it was Irwindale or Lyons or something like that. It was just, it was just an iconic time to be a hot rodder and growing up in that. And then just some of the stories, and not even my dad, but from other people, and they come up with an idea and they just make a sand casting and make whatever manifold or cylinder heads or whatever you want. And they just did it. And it wasn't for business, I mean, it was just in the desire to go quicker and faster.
I talked to Marvin Graham's a friend of mine, and I talked to him, and he said him and his partner had a little forging shop set out in his backyard in the building they called the Shack, where they actually used to make their own injectors. They would forge their own injectors, pour the metal and make their own injectors. So, I mean, I appreciate Top Fuel world today, but there's something that's lost in guys that had a craft where they get their hands dirty in these cars. I mean, you've seen Don Garlits at the races. The guy was filthy from head to toe, but he'd get in that car and run.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, Garlits, is my I grew up just, the guy could walk on water like a Michael Jordan or the like. And yeah, I mean, he built the cars himself. He drove the cars himself. He drove the truck and trailer down the road and got it there. Like he did everything. And that's obviously the business of it has changed a lot. I mean, you could say the same thing about AJ Foyt, or Richard Petty, these guys. I mean, they did everything themselves, and they did it. And that's how it was back in the day. It's obviously grown into a huge business, with racing. And same thing happened in Formula One. If you look at pictures from Formula One in the 60s and 70s, and they're on, guys in cutoffs and no shirts and ramp trucks racing Formula One. And it's just, that's how, and that wasn't that long ago in my mind, the 1970s. So it's neat. It's hot rodding, it's cars, it's guys, and girls for that matter, that want to go quicker and faster and trying to figure out how to do it. And I just really, really fortunate that I'm a Dixon Jr., again, product of his environment.
You are fortunate, and I want to ask you about that. You're the same age as me, Larry. So my first race was when I was either 7 or 8 years old, and I never looked back after that. It was a Top Fuel. Actually, it was a funny car, 8-car match race set up here at IPR. And were you old enough to remember Lions Dragstrip, which closed December 2nd, 1972? Do you remember that track?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my dad crashed there in 71. And I remember being in the push truck, and sitting there, and they broke a crank in the final round and that big fireball at the end. But I have vague memories of Lions and going down the return road and the refineries and stuff, with the flames in the background. And yeah, but I didn't think Lions was any more iconic than Irwindale or some of these other. It's like that's where I tell people I didn't play sports. It was every other weekend we were going to a race, and it was Irwindale. If we drove a long ways away, it was long ways to Orange County or long ways to Bakersfield. You had so many racetracks in Southern California, and you just you bounced around. The one track I don't remember is San Fernando. I got pictures of me there at it, but I got no memories of it. But Irwindale Lions, those were tracks that I spent my childhood at.
Well, I think Lions has probably taken on more of a fabled history just because of the last race at Lions, which I've done several articles on, and that was just an over-the-top, total freak show of an event. I don't know if you guys were there for that, weren't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been a while, but when that movie, the Hollywood movie, that Pulp Fiction guy, they were using some background, like the Real Dawn Steel, and some of those names. My dad was sponsored by Real Dawn Steel, and so then I ended up posting a picture, the last drag race, Lions, my dad driving the Real Dawn Steel car. That they had at the time that was sponsored by the radio station. So it's I remember it. It's iconic. I've obviously been to the museum. Yeah. Anybody that has an opportunity to do that, it's neat because it brings back I don't know, in innocence, I guess, of that era, and not only just drag racing, but hot rods and the whole total car culture in Southern California.
Well, Carl Olson gave me a tour through the Lions Museum. I did an interview with him out there on site, and I've done a lot of stuff on the whole Lions, the last drag race. He's been encouraging me to write a book on that last race. He just to take one of your articles and expand it into 300 word or 3,000 words, and you've got a book on it. But I mean, that museum and just the history of Southern California, it isn't so much that it's about Lions. It's just that museum encapsulates what was going on in Southern California at that time. And you were a part of that. And so was your dad.
Yeah. A time capsule would be, and it's neat. And I enjoy that. I get caught up. I liked the cars from then, they were just so simple that the engines in a Top Fuel car were so simple then, that there was, the wiring consisted of a ground strap, to like flip the mag switch and now your engine's live. That was it, nothing else. It's just simpler times. It's just different, but it was fun to, again, I was very young and my memories are not as strong as obviously my dad living through that whole time and competing, but it's still I still enjoy it.
I assume that at 3 years old you do not remember the 1970s iconic 1970 Winter Nationals iconic picture of you and your dad. I assume you don't remember that.
No, and I wish I did. I've gotten asked because I posted. We ended up with the final round coverage from My World of Sports, and I posted that on my site. And me talking and stuff. And I'm like, I don't really remember it. And it's like, to be honest with you, I don't know that I had any reason to, because it was like every other weekend was a race, and that was just another race that we went to. And that one was at Pomona. Okay, yeah, but but we went to the races all the time. It wasn't a once or twice a year kind of thing. So it was great times. But like, just even looking at that footage from there, my mom, and you're trying to do my mom's. I'm doing trying to catalog. I'm like, okay, she's 23 years old. My dad's he'd have been 30. And like, they've got these top fuel cars and they're racing the Garletses and Perdones and all that kind of stuff. And my mom's 23, push starting a top fuel car, like for final round at the NHRA Winter Nationals. And I just think that's so, bitching,
That,
good
that
stuff.
that is cool stuff. I mean, you're now I read, I think it was Phil Burgess' article where you had said that your mom actually met your dad out on Vanise Boulevard, chased him
Right.
around trying to track him down because she definitely wanted to go out on a date with him.
Yeah. Again, going back to the legend in the green 55, and he ruled the street, and it was it's neat, and you just think about your parents as kids, and dating and doing all that stuff, and all the stuff you see in American Graffiti and movies like Hollywood Nights
Oh yeah.
and such. I just think it's neat. I didn't get that. By the time I got my license, and I was so excited about it, and Van Nuys Boulevard, and being able to cruise that, you couldn't cruise Van Nuys Boulevard anymore because you had I call them squirrels, out there, and they put down coolant or oil and doing donuts in the middle of the street. And, the cops, they literally just blocked off the street. So it was like, you had no parking signs literally on Van Nuys Boulevard for Wednesday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. So they did not want to attract that kind of crowd. It got ruined by the time I got old enough for it. So so I bypassed cruising, went right to street racing. So.
Yeah. Well, just the history of it is cool. Do you happen to know what happened to the 55? Where I heard that Poldy had it at one point.
There was a few people that had it that Jim Adolf that worked through the magazines, and he was a funny car racer for quite a while. Jim Adolf owned it. Dale Poldy owned it. George Gray, that used to painted the first top fuel car that I drove, the Miller Genuine draft car, had a paint shop there in Van Nuys for a number of years. So one of the owners of it that I saw at my dad's celebration of life said that the car actually got T-boned and got destroyed at some point in the 70s. And it's funny now that people, oh gosh, why wouldn't you have put that back together? And it's like, because 55 Chevys you could buy for $900. Like there was nothing, it wasn't a bit, now the car's destroyed. So, you'd spend more money fixing it than it would be to just get another one and do something with it. And that's kind of what happened to the car. So yeah, I mean, now you think about it, but 60 years later or something, it'd be a big deal. But in the 70s, it really wasn't a big deal.
Well, just because of the history of that car, it would have been nice to see that car end up in, I don't know, the Peterson Museum or someplace,
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. All this stuff, it kind of got me thinking of maybe trying to recreate, something like that. And so I don't know. I got the rest of my life to figure it out.
Speaking of the rest of your life, so 2 years ago, I'm going to jump around here if you don't mind. 2 years ago,
I'll follow along.
yeah, 2 years ago, I was walking through the pits. I was taking photography of all the nostalgia stuff at Joliet, and I'm sure you don't remember this, but I yelled at you, "Hey, Larry, give me a picture." You turned, gave me a smile. I got a picture of you. You were there, if I understand this right, with a top fuel car. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, where is that at? What's going on with that?
It's right, it's right there. I got two of them. so so the deal I'm going to say in, well, to back up, when I lost my ride with Bob Vandergriff, and I'm trying to figure out what my next move is, there's not, at the time I'm in my late 40s, and teams aren't hiring late 40s drivers unless they're writing, big checks. So what am I going to do? So, I get this wild idea to build a two-seat car. I go through all the process of making sure it's safe and you can get insurance and do all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like you're going to be in this business, like of operating a two-seat car. It'd be a smart idea to have a top fuel car. So 2016, purchased Tony Petragon's, like when he shut the doors on his whole funny car up, purchased all of that. And then at the same time, Vandergriff was going out of business. And so I bought a couple top fuel cars. So have a conventional top fuel car and then a two-seat top fuel car. That was kind of the plan with it, whether it was for me to drive or you got to take two-seat people really excited about it and want to move to the front seat, so to speak. You'd be able to put them in. So I've done some match racing with the conventional top fuel car. Licensed a few people in it. Over the past year or two, Will Smith, Cody Crone, a couple guys that came from the A Fuel ranks, and mentoring them, and then kind of getting them up and getting them going on that side of things, and then being able to run the two-seater as well. I run that car, 3 or 4 times during the year. I think we're up to, I'm about at 50 riders that we've given rides to in the two-seat car. So it's I'm not on the NHRA tour, but still making noise.
Well, and I talked to you out at Nitro Revival in Irwindale here this last year, and I asked you the question. I said, "So what do you get? Is this just a bunch of corporate you rah types? Let's go out and have a motivational day event?" And you told me that it was not that way at all. Tell me the story about the guy who saved his money as a grocery bagger. Tell me that story.
Okay, so the one weekend that we go. I have an event set up where it's a guy that used to own a dealership, right? And he's got his private jet, and him and his couple buddies are going to go. They want to. That's going to be their wild hogs or whatever you want to call it. They're all going to, like, the 3 of them are going to go for a ride. So we set up this deal. We're going to go to Memphis and we're going to spend the day and give them 3 laps. Well, a couple of weeks before we get ready to leave, I get this guy that gets a hold of me and says, "Hey, I really want to go for a ride. And I hear you're going to Memphis." And it's like, "Yeah, but my slate's, I got 3 people already going and I don't." So long story short, we do the deal. I talk to my guys. Everybody's like, "Okay, we're going to make 4 laps. It's going to be a long day," because we're not, it's going to be a long day. So, but everybody that goes for a ride, like you're small talking and stuff. Well, why you want to do it? All of that. And this, along with the guy that's in a private jet, flies over from Nashville to Memphis, which is, it's probably like you're in the air probably 7 minutes, before you're having to go down. Well, this other guy comes over and he's in a mid 80s Olds Calais beater. Him and his mom come over, and his story literally is he had heard that when I announced that I had the 2-seater and he knew it was over a $10,000 ticket, he said he started saving his money. And and how that had happened is I said, "You're going to have other guests and stuff, right?" And he's, "Oh no, it's just me and my mom." And it's like, I really don't want anybody to know about it. And then that's where it went. It's like, he worked at a grocery store and he'd been saving his money, $65 a week for 3 years until he had the $10,000. As soon as he had the money saved, he literally got a hold of me and said, "I want to go for a ride." And he didn't want any of his friends to tell him how he should spend his money. And so it's like he just literally wanted to do that and enjoy the ride. And so he did. And so it's like you literally have the full spectrum of customers on the same day. A guy paying, and paying for him and his buddies, and they're all going, and they had the suburban limousine take him from the airport, right to the truck, and great people. But on the same day, I got this guy and his mom, and we literally saved for 3 years to be able to do that. And they both were ecstatic after I don't know that one could be happier than the other. They're just both happy doing what they want to do. So, the car, I have so many, like I said, I got almost 50 rides, 50 customers in it. And so I got 50 different stories, and there's so many different stories, and everybody's got a different story. Why they like type fuel cars, why they're doing it. And it's just, it's been a really, really neat, because there literally isn't anywhere else in the world that you can go for a ride in a top fuel car. And it's not for everybody, because there's some people think I'm crazy, they're crazy, and that's fine. It's not for you. Cliff diving isn't for me. It's for a chosen few. Okay, that's fine. I'm not looking to appeal to the masses. I want to appeal to the people that seriously love the class and love the sport and want to go for a ride.
Have you worked out your differences with the NHRA as far as the two-seater goes? Has that happened?
Yes, we've worked out our differences. Not to the point where they're open arms, going to let me go run on any of their racetracks, but they also aren't going to, call the dogs on me and, try to push me off a cliff either. So I didn't build that car to make enemies. When I built the car, I actually had their blessing when I did it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. And then, the legal department, I don't say that the legal department didn't reverse their position. The legal department found out about it and they didn't like it. And then the people that told me, hey, go right ahead, they didn't take my call anymore.
I'm glad that's smoothed out, Larry. I am.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
And to that point, it's like, gosh, we have a conventional top fuel car that we run at their events. I have an NHRA license that I've had, this whole time, because at the time when they came down on me, they gave me an indefinite suspension. Well, I appealed that suspension and I won the appeal, and I couldn't go to the appeal, and it was 3 NHRA employees on the appeal panel, and they said I didn't do anything wrong. So then it dropped all restrictions. So, but you haven't seen me out there racing because it at the time, because obviously it takes a lot of money. There's a lot of people that would like to go racing that can't go racing because of funding. And that was probably my story. Yeah. Now, gosh, we built that car we debuted in 2017. So, that was 8 years ago. A lot has changed then. I'm 8 years older, and, I'm doing other stuff, or chasing other things. I got my son over the summer. I think everything that happened with my dad, my dad passing and him probably maturing through the process too. It's like, Dad, I think I want to race. So it's like, well, if you think you do, then let's go to Frank Hawley's and see if you do. So he went to Frank Hawley's school and got a super comp license. And I enjoyed that. And to be totally truthful with you, I would be more excited to help him follow his dreams than I would be chasing my old dream. Yeah. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the trophy to prove it. I'd rather work on, him getting his, I told him I'll work in his merchandise trailer, while he's racing. Well, and I'd be so proud too.
Let's say it, Larry. 62 wins, 51 top qualifying, 46 low ET, 33 top speed, 3 NHRA world championships. You got nothing to prove, do you?
as a kid growing up in the sport, and I mean, this sounds, people might say, yeah, whatever. I just like, I didn't know if I'd ever get I wanted to race and drive a top fuel car, but I never knew if I'd ever get the chance. I knew my mom and dad weren't going to buy me a car. So it's like, if I wanted to do this, I had to figure it out. And I felt fortunate to drive one, and then getting a license in one, and then to be able to compete in one, and then just all the things that happened, all the opportunities. I felt really blessed, and there's no, I guess, nobody. I'm looking for the words, but it isn't like just because you got a license and all that that means that you could just drive for the rest of your life. It's like nobody knows how long this ride's gonna last, and it's like every year that like you finish a season, and it's like you felt really blessed, and like if it all ended then, you got to be good with it, and that's kind of like. So I think I got like 15 some seasons, racing out there full time. I got to do a lot. And as you just said, I feel really, really blessed, and fortunate. So
I was just texting with Jack Beckman yesterday, and we're trying to get him set up to come on and talk about the future for him. And I tell you, he's like a kid in a candy store, just being able to get back in that funny car and drive. He's still doing elevator repair at the same time he's doing this.
Don't quit your day job, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He doesn't know how long the ride's going to last, but he's taking every second he can. Ace said to me one time, he said, getting to the top, that's a tough deal. Staying there is even harder.
No question about it. And for somebody like John Force, I mean, he used to get ribbed how long it took him to win one, I mean, it was like, I don't know, 7 years, 10 years, whatever the number was to win his first. And he didn't stop, and he didn't look back, and he wasn't, I mean, it basically had to, fight. Look how long, I mean, he's 70 some years old, and he was still racing and competitive till his last run in the car. So, not everybody gets to do that. Everybody's got how their story, how they retire and all that kind of stuff. And Jack's got a second lease on life in the sport. And I think it's great. And I can tell people that I knew Jack Beckman when, we were, again, there's a few people that I knew, that we grew up at the street races. Jack is one of them that, we're in the San Fernando Valley, him, Steve Johnson, Karen and Gary Stouffer, and just loving cars and bikes for that matter, and racing and trying to figure out how to do it, and gosh, if you could make a living doing it, oh, that would be the best. And a few of us got to do it, and I just feel really, really again fortunate for it. I'm a fan of Jack, man. If he wants to do it till he's in his 70s, more power to him. But he ain't going to line up against me. I can promise you that.
Well, I came across a picture. We're going to hop backwards again now. I came across a picture of your dad and Snake. Snake can look like a little kid. He must have been, just coming out of his Road King days or something there. It was very early on. How did your relationship with Snake develop? I mean, how did that all happen? Was it through your dad, and then it just developed of you needed a ride to the races? How did that all happen?
I think it didn't, my dad obviously and Snake knew each other. My dad hung out in Van Nuys. Snake hung out with the Road Kings, and they're kind of a Burbank, which seemed like, now it seems like they're close towns, but back then that was a long ways away. But they not really from that way. When my dad retired from racing in '79, that was I was just getting old enough to where I got the bug, but I don't have a driver's license yet. So I would get rides from people that lived in the valley and go to Orange County or Bakersfield, and a couple of the guys, Bill Meropoulos would be one, Dwight Salisbury's another one, but I literally rode my bicycle over to Snake's shop in when his shop was in Northridge, and the crew guys, at the time it was Joe Cozy and Billy Bevel. And they'd give me a ride. I'd ride in the rig, and then we'd go there and hang out, and then I'd get a ride back. And so Snake Snake could have probably fired him if they didn't give other people rides, because he's so serious about racing. So I mean that's that part of the story. But then years later, when I started crewing out there, I was in between gigs, and they had a guy leaving. They're looking for a couple guys help, and I kind of fit the suit, so to speak, from that standpoint. I went to work on his pit crew. But it was through Mike Klober, was crew chief at the time, and I talked to him, and then Prudhomme ended up calling me, but it was to go to work on his car, and it wasn't anything more than that. But the thing about Snake is, and his people, and you have to remember back then when I went to work there, there was 4 of us on the crew. Like, I mean, it was a crew chief and 3 crew guys, and like that was it. And it was like you could maintain a fuel car with 4 people, and so that's it. But Snake took an interest in his people. Like some guys wanted to be a crew chief, other guys, well, I wanted to drive, and so like, oh, you do you? And it's like, well, yeah. And he's like, well, like, how are you going to get there? I said, I got no idea. And so I think one like for a Christmas bonus one year, he got me Holly School as a Christmas bonus. So, I went to Florida and went through all of that, and then, came back, and then you're literally watching guys that raced in alcohol moving up to the fuel cars. And so I'm watching, the Austins and the Johnsons and the Andersons and the Petrogons and everybody doing that. And it's like, and I'm working away on this fuel car, and I'm like, I'm never going to get a shot unless I go about it. So that's kind of, I ended up quitting Snakes, for a season, and went and drove John Mitchell's at the time, the Montana Express car, and he ran alcohol cars then. And then we built an 8 fuel car, and I did that for that would have been 1993 season. Did that, but then when it became hunting season, he parked the car and no more car, and he's going hunting. And it's like, well, I don't hunt, like, so it's like, I want to work on cars. And, this is in September, and it's like, well, come back in April and we'll go racing again. And I'm like, I can't sit still for 6 months. So it was literally, I ended up going back to work at Snake. Snake had just announced that his last, that was 1994 was going to be his final year of driving. And he had a really bad season in 93. The entire team quit except one guy. He hired Wes Cerny to tune the car, and they're looking for a whole slew of guys. And so I asked Snake, hey, I'm looking for A's. Hey, man, don't, like, you ain't got to talk to the crew chief if you want a job. Because, again, if you're not on his team, he don't care about you. So, like, it's kind of how it went. So I went to Wes, and Wes and Roland talked Snake into hiring me back. So I went back to work there on his crew, and Snake had told me that it's like, you can't go drive on the off weekends. It's like, it's my car and everything. Like, you have to be all in. I'm like, no problem. Yeah, I need to make money, because I wasn't making money, driving an alcohol car. So that, and then how that snowballed was, one weekend, Wes is wanting to go testing, and Snake can't go test. And so they're trying to find somebody to drive the car, and then nobody, McEwen can't fit in the car, and this guy can't, he doesn't like this guy. And so it got kind of a heated thing between Cerny and Snake. And it was kind of like, let that effing kid get his license and you guys can go test anytime you want. And I'm like listening to this while I'm over here building the short block. I'm like, wow, that'd be awesome. So, and that's kind of what happened. It was a couple races later, which was Gainesville. Hey, we're going to stay over and get you some laps in the car, get your license, and we can test. And then that'll give us the option if we want to run the rest of the year. And then that's kind of, I think, what sparked it for Snake, because it was literally like Snake was going to do 1 year. Skull was in it for that year. And like, that was it. Like there was no extension of the sponsorship or anything like that, but got the license. And I'm not putting words in his mouth, but he was quoted saying he enjoyed it, standing on the starting line, watching his car go down the track. He still liked racing. And so that's kind of like, I think it invigorated him, maybe him and Lynn, to go seek funding and such, to keep the keep the business going. Cause I mean, he's, you know, at the time he's in his early 50s. So it isn't like he's old or something like that. So then that gave him another, you know, I'm going to say 10-year, 15-year run. Cause it was, gosh, you know, like he stayed in business till 09, and that was 1994. So yeah, 15 years longer. So it was neat. It was a ball. I mean, I really enjoyed it. You know, it was, and then, you know, at the end, you know, started losing funding, and it's tough. And the world's, you know, the world's always changing. I mean, it's different now than it was when we lost all the sponsorship and stuff. So it's just, but it was fun. You know, I ended up working for Perdome for 20 years, and I got, you know, nothing but good things to say about working there.